Hey there, welcome back. So this week we're going to be talking about TensorBoard. So before you get into these videos and these notebooks, be sure you check out the video from the TensorFlow Dev Summit on TensorBoard. So it kind of gives you an overview of what it is and like how to use it. However, it goes through the code a little fast, so that's what I'm going to be focusing on in this series of videos. So if you don't know what TensorBoard is yet, it's basically a web app that you use to view things about your TensorBoard or TensorFlow network. You can look at the graph. You can look at parameters as you're training it. After you train it. So things like weights and biases and the cost. So basically, it'll help you debug, because if you're training and it's just not working, then you can kind of look at what's going on with the weights and biases and the cost after you're done. It's really convenient, and TensorBoard is just pretty cool. So I'm going to be using the Anna Karenina character-wise RNN network to kind of show you how this all works. So the first thing to do is let's check out how this graph actually looks using TensorBoard. The way you use TensorBoard in general is that you write out the information about your graph and about your network and the training to some files. These are usually called like logs, right? So all you need to do is just use tf.summary.filewriter, give it the path to where you want to save these logs, and then in this case, since we want to look at the graph, we're giving it the graph. And this is basically all you need to do to view the graph for this network in TensorBoard. So just as a reminder, I'm getting the graph here. So this function build RNN, passing all these hyperparameters. And you can see here's where I build it. So this is the LSTM cells, doing multiple layers and running the data through the RNN. And then down here, I'm doing the softmax and getting the cost. So this is where I wrote out the graph, and I wrote it to here. So let's see what this looks like in TensorBoard. So TensorBoard comes installed when you install TensorFlow through like pip or conda or something. So you'll notice I'm in my TensorFlow environment here. And then I just need to do TensorBoard log dir. So this just tells it where your logs are stored. So here I stored logs/1. Okay, and it loads up, and this is where we need to go. So you just copy this URL and paste it into your browser. And here is TensorBoard. So you see all these different tabs: scalars, images, audios, graphs, and that's what we're interested in now, and distributions and histograms. Also show you scalars and distributions and histograms later. You can learn more about images and audio and embeddings from the documentation or from the video. So if we go to graphs, then this is going to load up the graph for the RNN that we just saved. Okay, and there it is, completely zoomed out so we can see everything. So if you click, hold, and drag, then you can move this around, and you can zoom in, like so, you can zoom out, and so on. So here what we're seeing are these little ovals are our operations. So this one's called sequence output, and this is a concatenation. And this one is called graph output, and this is a reshape. So you see these names here, they correspond to what I wrote when I was building the graph. So here is sequence output, it's a concatenation, and here is graph output, it's a reshape. So each of these operations here is one of the nodes in the graph that you saw. And when you name it, the name shows up in TensorBoard. So here is graph output, reshape, and sequence output. And these connecting things here, this shows the size of the tensors that are flowing. This one is flowing to a matrix multiplication. And that matrix multiplication is coming from our softmax weights to the matrix multiplication. And we have our softmax biases. And that's going to add, and that gives us our predictions. And these are also going over here. So here we're calculating our loss, and there's all this other stuff going on that I don't really know what it is. And then here we see these sort of operations for calculating the gradients. There's our atom optimizer, RNN, this stuff that I'm not really sure what's going on. We can see here that it's passing to the atom optimizer. So you can kind of see we have this atom node up here, and it's taking inputs from all these things, and it's being sent from here. So it's TensorBoard's way of like connecting these two nodes in your graph without actually having to draw lines everywhere. Because you can see like this thing has 6 lines coming in, 5 lines coming out, and so like if you're just drawing lines everywhere, it'd get really messy. So instead, it just tells you where it's going and then highlights it when you hover over it. Okay, so this is actually a little confusing as to like what do these beta powers belong to, and what's going on with all these slices and stuff. So TensorFlow gives you what are called namescopes that help you kind of group all these operations together, and it makes everything really nice. And I'll show you how to do that next.